All right, so welcome to our conversation.
Something that occurred to me while we were talking to switch topics is lifespan.
Great conversation, and one of my favorite subjects. We have to break down, I believe, our civilization into three segments. From the moment that we evolved into Homo sapiens sapiens, the human beings we are today, till agriculture. So from, let's say, 200,000 years to 15,000 years, we had no agricultural societies around. And then from that point, 15,000 years until recently, and then the very recent time, let's say the last 100 years. So if you look at it this way, the picture is really interesting. Because when they analyze structures of individuals from prior to 15,000 years ago, they were taller, they were way more robust, and then 15,000 years ago, we started to shrink because our diet drastically changed due to agriculture. The food variety was much less. They started to eat more grains, which normally hunter-gatherers don't really eat grain products. So we started to eat stuff that we can digest, but we are really not predisposed to eat under natural circumstances. So we started to shrink, our teeth got worse, our bones got weaker, according to science. This is black and white archaeology. And then in the very modern times, again, we start to grow because a quantity was more. From actually the Second World War on, there's a significant giantism that started to show up. People significantly got bigger. If I just look at my family, I have 26 cousins. On one side of my family, everyone is above 6 feet, including girls, but none of my aunts and uncles are 6 feet. My parents have 6 siblings on both sides. So it's really interesting that nobody is above 6 feet in that generation, and my generation, everyone is above 6 feet. So it's an interesting one.
I didn't realize that there was a point where we were a bigger stature.
And then lifespan.
And you're saying because there's more variety of their diet.
There was way more variety based on animal migration, what was in season food-wise, how much rain there was present. All of these things continuously changed what we ate, what we consumed, what we hunted, what we gathered. That went away with agriculture. And then it became much flatter, the activities what we were doing. With agriculture is really boring. If you raise cows, you have every day the same job. It kills your brain, it doesn't challenge you. You do the same thing over and over and over. Animal migration for hunter-gatherers, the way how you hunt a porcupine or a kudu or birds, drastically different. You need to bring a different genius to it.
Sure.
There was a big variety a long time ago, which we don't have even today.
So how many years ago did the Homo sapiens and sapiens develop the cortex?
So the last 200,000 years that we count that Homo sapiens sapiens existed, which is modern men like we are.
With the cortex?
With
the cerebral cortex?
Yeah, the neurocortex. So prior to that, there was a version, but different. So we can really purely say the last 200,000 years that we have what we are today. It did change a little bit at the beginning, but not drastically. So the last 15,000 years is what drastically changed the way how we existed.
Because I was listening to a show talking about how many calories the cortex takes.
Yeah.
It takes so many more calories. They look at different animals in a relationship to how many hours a day they have to be looking for food.
Yeah.
And with the cerebral cortex this large, we basically figured out like 21 hours a day we had to be looking for food or something. But of course, with that cortex came the ability to conceptualize agriculture and other things that made our food much more available.
Well, but did it? That's the question. Because when they analyzed hunter-gatherer tribes, what they discovered was the following. They spend about 15 hours on work, meaning hunting and gathering. Only 15 hours a week.
A week?
A week. 15 hours they spend on fixing their gear, fixing the huts, their camp, cleanup duties. That's about 30 hours they spend on life, which is fascinating because people think that being a hunter-gatherer is such a full-time job. It's not. We were so good at it that we knew how to harvest that nature. We were amazing at it. Now, when we switched to agriculture society, 60 hours, 80 hours a week, excluding your homestead, was the norm. So we traded a very luxurious, very happy environment to something that is much more complicated to maintain as a human being.
But now, you and I spend 3 hours a day thinking about food.
But you need money for it.
Yes, yes.
So when it comes to livelihood, right?
If you put that work time goes into the ability to find new food sources.
Right.
But what is your thought on how did we develop this cerebral cortex? Why was there a change?
I think the environment was a huge factor. Now, where we evolved as Homo sapiens sapiens, still we don't really know. Interestingly enough, for about 10 years now, I have a small research group that's working together with my company, and based on all the stuff that we saw, I had this belief that the Okavango Delta, the Kalahari Desert, is where our species evolved.
What country?
That's Botswana, and
There's a
Namibia.
report out this week about this.
And that's why I'm saying that. And the report just came out. I was so thrilled about it because I've been preaching about this for about a decade. And there's a report that came out that doesn't necessarily mean anything because it might not be right. And there are plenty of scientists who believe that their argument is not completely solid. It doesn't matter. But what's interesting about it is that your question was, like, how did we evolve into doing and being able to just spend 15 hours, let's say, on a hunter-gathering and still manage to survive, right? I think it happened through a very interesting process. The environment changed, and the environment forced us to change our ways as a species, not yet Homo sapiens sapiens prior to that. And then there was a niche, there was a hole in the environment. One of the niches that we developed as Homo sapiens sapiens to hunt in very high temperatures, over 105 degrees, to be able to perform physically. We have this sophisticated gland sweating system. Then we are able to move from A to B in a very energy efficient way. So when we were out there in that high heat in a certain part of Africa, other animals just couldn't keep up. So we were able to push them, But to be able to hunt and track, like a hunting dog, for example, you needed to track. So we developed a tracking device which requires to be able to do calculations, predictions. You need to bring an artistic self when you don't see any obvious signs, but from the previous signs, like footprints, you learned about that very animal you're tracking, so you were able to start to move and emulate the way how they will act out, how that particular animal would move, would behave in this given situation where you don't have obvious signs where they're at. So I think that's what our brain evolved to do. So thank you very much, and please subscribe, like, follow, share all of these thoughts if you find it fitting for your life. Thank you.